Hi guys, I hope you guys are having an amazing day. Um, so there are many services offered by our school to help us persevere and achieve academic excellence. Did you know about the many underutilized resources our schools offer? Life can sometimes get in the way of our education, but it doesn't have to with resources such as the Student Health Services, MT2C, the Stand, and EOPS, just to name a few. As a full-time student at Mesa for the past couple of years, I didn't learn about these resources until spring of 2023. There are so many, and it's easy to feel overwhelmed and not know where to look for help, especially when life gets overwhelming and it gets hard. I myself would never have known about these resources until I did some research. And so that's what I did through the San Diego Mesa College website, which was last updated in 2023. After some digging, I've decided to inform you guys about the services I find most important in order to continue achieving our academic goals. Have you ever asked yourself why you pay that $22 health fee every semester? That health fee pays for access to a variety of benefits at the Student Health Services Center. Benefits include free immunizations, pap tests, pregnancy tests, cholesterol testing, and ECGs, which is a recording of your heart's electrical activity. And according to the Miramar College website, also updated this year, they have a lactation room in their Student Health Services office. So why wouldn't you take advantage of these services, especially considering how expensive they are everywhere else? I don't know. We also have physical exams and mental health services available within our reach. We have on-site physicians and licensed therapists on our campuses. An added bonus is you get a free Calm app subscription if you hold a Kaiser medical insurance. Lastly, they have necessities right outside their doors up for grabs like condoms and women's products. Moving on to our library, which offers many services to support students academically, with my favorite being the MT2C or the tutoring center. Did you know our tutors make $19.50 to $23 an hour? And you can become one too. It's easy. All you have to do is take Education 100. It's only a 3-week course. I actually just finished it myself, and hopefully I'll see you guys at the MT2C. Here's what you can expect during a session. I'm going to share my screen here. Oh boy. All right. So tutors are trained to help you become an independent learner, and they're there to guide you. They are not to give you answers or teach you the material. Your professor is supposed to teach you the material, whereas the tutor is supposed to help you maybe gain a better understanding on a specific concept that you were not sure of during the lecture. They can suggest study techniques, identify where you need help, and provide examples. Tutoring is offered over Zoom or in person from humanities to STEM. You can utilize our 24/7 net tutor in math or writing, and there is also a one-on-one 24/7 reference assistance for research purposes with the help of a librarian. Yes, that means 24/7 access to a librarian. Not to mention the great team of tutors at the Writing Center to help you write your research paper. Here's the STEM tutoring schedule for summer 2023. And the schedule does change every semester, so be sure to look online. There we go. So be sure to look online. This also includes like basically the library hours. So the library this summer is open Monday through Thursday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. and they're closed Friday through Sundays. The stand has to be one of the coolest services Mesa offers. Every student gets 100 credits every semester, which can be used towards the food pantry or the professional clothing closet. If you want a quick snack between your classes, you could just make a quick pit stop. They've made it to where it's like very easy and very fast. The stand also offers emergency aid and housing assistance, such as shelters. They also offer food and gas gift cards for those in need. Mesa also hosts events through the stand to support their students, which is run by an amazing team of volunteers. The mobile pantry is hosted every first Monday of each month, and the farmers market is hosted every third Thursday of the month. They offer everything from canned goods to fruits and veggies. They're open for all students, faculty, and even people in the neighborhood. Here's what just one student had to say about the stand. If it wasn't for the stand, I wouldn't be able to eat due to the high cost of living in California. I work and it's still not enough to live on while attending school. The income inequality has gotten worse and more difficult for the middle and lower class to get by in life. I mean, I'm sure we can all relate to this student. Last but not least, the most beneficial resource is a program called EOPS, or the Extended Opportunity Programs and Services. EOPS is a program that students can apply for. It does come with eligibility requirements, although they're very simple and easy to meet. They offer easy and fast access to counselors. They help you, excuse me, they help you apply for FAFSA and other resources, and much more benefits in that program alone. It's one of the largest programs that MESA offers. The EOPS also has a scholarship specific to those in the program, which means that the pool is much smaller and there's a higher chance of winning an award. Being a part of the EOPS program also has fee waiver benefits. Consider the benefits that I mentioned about the student health services. Now imagine all of those services are free simply because you're part of the program. And we can kiss that $45 parking fee goodbye simply because we're also a part of the program. And the best perk is they actually waive the application fee to certain universities. Excuse me. And we all know how those fees add up. Goodness. Mesa City and Miramar all share the same or similar programs, but each have their own. I'm sorry. Each have their own unique programs as well. For example, I noticed on the City College website updated in 2023, they offer a program called Umoja, which means unity. It offers counseling, mentorship, and other services for African-American students and other historically underrepresented students who have the desire to transfer to a four-year program. The program also includes cultural field trips and university visits. Sorry, guys. Miramar has a program very similar to EOPS. It's called the CARE program. It targets single-parent households. Goodness. It offers additional support to achieve their academic excellence. Miramar also hosts a farmers market called the Really Free Farmers Market, which partners with Feeding San Diego. It's hosted every Mondays and Tuesdays, 11 to 2 p.m. and 9:30 to 2 p.m. on Wednesdays. So you see, Mesa City and Miramar set up their students for success. I only mentioned a few resources. There's a ton more. There are resources such as borderless scholars for undocumented students, rising scholars for those impacted by incarcerations, and a variety of support of at the Career Center, which they can offer students, including help with transferring to university. It's awful timing. Life can be overwhelming, especially if we are juggling multiple things at once, like kids, work, school, and not to mention the financial hardships we're all facing. By utilizing these free resources offered by our schools, it can feel like a weight lifted off our shoulders, and it certainly has for me. Sorry, guys, I don't know where that attack came from.
Okay, if we're just going down the list, am I supposed to start with feedback? Is that right? Okay. Okay, well, first of all, I'm so sorry that you had a coughing attack. I think we've all been there, and you did a really good job of persevering. I don't know if it's worse when those happen on Zoom or in person, but either way, like, well done, just continuing to get through it. Overall, I was just going to say, I think you did a really good job of not using filler words. I know that was something that like we talked about like way early on, and today you did a really good job of staying fluent. Similarly, like your pace was really even throughout. And I loved the addition of your visual aids. I think is really helpful to get something a little more concrete in terms of understanding the resources that you were talking about. Yeah, we'll stop there.
Thank you.
I also applaud you for getting through that cough attack. I know how difficult that can be, and I think you laughed it off at the end, which was the best way to do it. You know, honestly, it's relatable to all of us and added to, you know, that a little bit. But other than that, I think your gesturing throughout the whole speech was very natural, and it helped with the flow of everything. And especially your body with all of that information, especially those visuals. I know Rachel mentioned that as well. You could tell how confident you were in presenting that and how in-depth you had done this research. So it was very believable, and we learned a lot about the resources that all these colleges have to offer. So thank you.
Thank you.
I agree with Jessica too. I think that you were really confident with the information, first of all. So whatever you had to go through and all that, you knew what you were talking about. And I also think you did a really good job also just pushing through despite the coughing attack, girl. And I also like how you did use your hands and your gestures. They're very appropriate and natural. And I also liked how you asked rhetorical questions that caused us to kind of think about your topic, and you know, engaged the audience in that way. Oh, and the visual aids too, because I remember last time we were, you know, we didn't get that, so we got it, and they were helpful. They were cool. Good job.
Thank you.
From my feedback, I think that you did really good involving the visual aids, and I like that you shared the information that the different programs had to offer. It was very clear and thorough. You pulled through despite your coughing, but I think your gestures and your body movement as well accommodated like your speech. So I think it was very well put together.
Thank you so much.
I think you did a good job presenting your speech. At the beginning, there were some filler words, but it was definitely an improvement compared to before. I have to say, I really like your visual aids as well. One of my favorite, well, at least my personal favorite, was where you included a quote from a student. And I think that really did make an impact and was a lot more, it helped me connect a lot more to like your topic and stuff. So good job.
Thank you.
First of all, I hope you're okay. No, that wasn't easy, but I can really tell that your confidence after all these calls and meetings definitely went up. It's mentioned before, I don't hear any filler words on my end, and that's not just because I'm deaf, but you really engaged with the audience. And what I was writing down was actually the programs for a couple of my guys that are starting to go to school, because it's just really, the information was really nice. I like passing it off and it was really relatable. Thank you.
I hope it helps in any way. Thank you for that.
Okay. I'm like, do we have time on the meeting? Yes, we do. But like the little red thing isn't flashing, so I'll get started. Okay, hey guys, I'm Rachel, and I am going to be talking about the differences between palliative care and hospice care. So it is often said, I'm sure we've all heard the saying, that the only things absolutely certain in life are death and taxes. And while we learn to do taxes by necessity, we often avoid preparing for or thinking about death because of how the topic makes us uncomfortable or grief associated with it. And yet we are facing a really interesting point in the history of the United States. So if we look at this visual, according to a Census Bureau article from actually last month, 1 in 6 Americans is over 65. So in our decade, it's 1 in 6. And in contrast, you can see that a century ago, those who were over 65 were actually 1 in 20. So in some, we can see that America is in fact aging quite a bit, and our population is skewing older as opposed to younger. However, this doesn't correlate to our understanding of age or our options, because as you can see on the right here, there are a lot of misconceptions about both hospice and palliative care. According to a study in the American Journal of Hospice and Palliative Care, Dr. Shalev found that, as you can see, about 37% of people had misconceptions or misperceptions about hospice, whereas 53% of people polled had misperceptions about palliative care. And so in light of this unique historical point where America is getting older and at the same time a lot of people aren't aware of their options, I want to talk to you guys today about the difference between hospice and palliative care. And I will be doing that in terms of who, what, and where. So who is eligible for hospice or palliative care? What services do each of these branches of healthcare offer? And then lastly, where can we find these services? So to get started, let's look at the who of hospice versus palliative care. So as you can see from this Venn diagram, hospice is generally designated for those who are expected to die in approximately 6 months or less. Now, this might be due to geriatric causes or something like a serious illness or disease. But either way, this is for people who are nearing the end of their lives. On the other hand, palliative care is for those who might have some sort of serious or debilitating illness, like a degenerative disease or an illness like cancer, and that might still be something that they are actively working on treating. So if it's a person with cancer, maybe they are still getting immunotherapy or chemotherapy. But palliative care can come alongside them, offer support, and add their treatments to whatever is going on in terms of preventative or curative treatments. Then you can see how in the middle there's overlap. Both hospice and palliative care extend outward. They offer services for people beyond just the patient. They offer services for the family members themselves. And this comes in the form of maybe coordinating with volunteer services to send someone into the home to take the burden off of the caregiver, to let that family member take a break, or to connect them with counseling services. So again, the major difference here is hospice is for people near the ends of their lives who are not receiving curative treatments, whereas palliative care might be coupled with other treatments, other alternatives. So now that we know what each of these branches of healthcare, or who each of these branches of healthcare is for, let's look at what services they provide. And here we're going to see some similarities along with the differences. So in terms of what each offers, you can see that in the beginning, there's a lot of overlap. So both hospice and palliative care are going to manage symptoms. According to the National Institutes of Health in 2021, managements of symptoms such as like taking care of bed sores, pain management would be included under that. Taking care of respiratory symptoms or digestive issues, those would be included. Medical equipment, hospital beds, shower chairs, those things can be brought into the home. Pain management, again, this could range from anything from an over-the-counter medication treatment plan to opioid prescriptions for pain. In-person visits, both hospice and palliative care can send a nurse or a CNA into the home for help. Both offer counseling services. Again, as I mentioned earlier, this might be for the patient, or it could also be for their family member as well. And then there are, of course, community resources. Both hospice and palliative care can connect the patient and their family with support groups or other volunteer care teams. And for these last 3 points, we see a bit of divergence. So hospice care offers continuous in-home care, as in you could have a nurse or a CNA in the home 24/7, round the clock care. And this makes sense because, again, hospice patients are at the end of their life. They need that additional bit of care and help that a person who's receiving palliative care might not. So it makes sense that here that hospice is offering this service, whereas palliative care isn't. And then next, the management of treatment symptoms. Again, this kind of makes sense given the who of palliative care. Palliative care patients might be suffering side effects. We probably all know someone who's experienced chemotherapy with very unpleasant side effects, and palliative care can come alongside that and help them manage those symptoms that are not from the disease, but from the treatment, right? And that's the difference between hospice and palliative care. And then finally, a palliative care coordinator can help navigate treatment options. It can be really overwhelming when you have a serious diagnosis. There's so many options out there, and a palliative care team coordinator can come in and work with a bunch of different specialists in order to coordinate the best possible care for that patient. Now, again, that's not really something that is applicable to a hospice patient, so it makes sense that they do not offer that service. So now that we have seen the who and the what of hospice and palliative care, we should remember that according to a California Hospice Association survey in 2019, it's found that 80% of people prefer to be at home. And that makes sense, right? Most of us are a lot more comfortable at home, especially when otherwise feeling very uncomfortable. So we want to ask the question of where can these services be accessed? And that brings me to my last point of where can hospice and palliative care be received? As you can see, again, there's a lot of overlap. Both hospice and palliative care are services that can be brought into the home. Again, via nurses, CNAs, coordinating with doctors and physicians and whole teams for care, they can come into your home. Within a hospice facility, and this might sound a little bit misleading. So even though a company or an organization might be called a hospice facility, they actually might offer palliative care services as well. So it's just an important thing to keep in mind. For example, in San Diego, the Elizabeth Hospice Center has a whole host of supports for communities who are going through really challenging things, and they have support for the whole family. Even though they do have hospice in the name, it's important to always do a little bit more research and see what exactly is being offered. Both assisted living facilities and skilled nursing facilities often have both hospice and palliative care specialties. But when it comes to hospitals, there's a little bit of a difference. So if you are going to receive hospice care at a hospital, you actually have to be at the inpatient level. So that means you've got the hospital bracelet, you're checked in a bed, you have an assigned place. Whereas if you're receiving palliative care at a hospital, you might just go in for an outpatient visit, maybe get an IV, get the medication you need, and then you can check out. So that's a key difference in where for hospice and palliative care. And then both are often offered at group homes. But then finally, sometimes there are specialized clinics, such as in San Diego with the Empowered Endings Clinic. They are just primarily a palliative care focused clinic. So as you guys can see, there's a lot of overlap, but there are also some key differences. And in some, I hope that now you have a grasp of these differences as well as similarities between hospice and palliative care. So whether for ourselves or for loved ones, I think it's really important to, just like when we do our taxes, to when we're facing death, to have an educated approach so that knowing what our options are can actually empower us to make more confident choices as we face death or serious illness. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Rachel. That was great. I think first I want to mention the time. You definitely cut down on the time. I know in our practice, we were a little high, so you did a great job of being succinct while keeping all of the important information there. So great job on that. I think the flow was amazing. I really noticed that, especially when you're presenting some very dense information, you're engaging, and your tone and fluctuation of voice really keeps us right along with you. So I think you did an amazing job of that, and I'll let everyone else touch on kind of other pieces there.
Thanks.
Yes, so I really like I admire how you enunciate your words or how you speak. Like you've done this before. It just helps me understand better also what you're talking about. I think that your topic I have very little knowledge of until your speech, and so I think you made the topic or a complicated, not really complicated, but a topic that no one has heard of, just simple to understand, easy to understand is what I'm trying to say. And it was very organized. I like the who, what, where. It, prepared my mind for what you were going to say and also helped me understand it too. So
Thanks.
I think your topic was very interesting. As being a referral coordinator myself, I refer to many different home health or hospice agencies, some of the palliative care as well. So I think you had a very clear understanding of everything, and just even provided myself more information on differences and the services that are provided by both aspects. And then I think you were very well on the practice, everything. It really made it perfect. So I think you did very well.
Thank you. Also, your job sounds so cool.
For Rachel's speech, I have to say I really admire your visual aids. I think they were really well done, and I think they were really professional and really easy to understand and read throughout your speech. I think it was a good idea to use those visual aids to break down the amount of information you went through. And I also have to say I really liked your tone of voice and your pace of how you were speaking throughout the speech. So yeah, I think you did a good job.
Thank you.
I think your speech was really straightforward and to the point, into teaching us the differences between hospice care and palliative care. But most of all, your articulation is being mentioned a lot for a reason. That was clear, concise. Your pacing was smooth. Your visual aids were awesome. I love your visual aids. They were really cool into breaking it down, barring stuff. That's all I got.
Thanks.
I don't think anybody has mentioned the fact that you have great eye contact. I do agree with everybody else. You have great pacing, but I just think that you have great eye contact, and that just means that you're just very confident and you clearly know what you're talking about. And I really appreciate that because it is a very important topic. You also have very smooth transition into your visual aids, which is really, really cool. Unlike me, but it's okay. We'll get it figured out.
Thank you.
All right. Hi, everybody. So today I will be talking about celiac disease. So when you eat at a restaurant, you may notice vegetarian, vegan, gluten-free, or other dietary options. Have you ever looked at the fine print on those gluten-free options? Maybe the fine print at the bottom of the menu, as I have shown here. You may be familiar if you have dietary restrictions. I did not look closely at this until my cousin was diagnosed with celiac disease. Then I really started to pay attention. As you can see in some of these local examples, for example, True Food Kitchen, Buffalo Wild Wings, Original Pancake House, and Puesto, the gluten-free label on some of those food items does not actually mean what it should for people with celiac disease. Gluten contamination is everywhere. And in this speech, I would like to help you understand what celiac disease is, if you don't already, focusing on the presence and contaminative nature of gluten in our everyday lives and just how serious the resulting damage that exposure to gluten does to those with the disease. So I'm sure we all can recall a time where food just didn't sit well. Maybe we even had food poisoning. Now, imagine you experience this pain after most meals, but you can't figure out why. This is the reality for many of those with undiagnosed celiac disease. Now, consider finally being diagnosed and thinking you have control over your body once again, but you continue to experience gluten exposure and pain, even when you've attempted to cut gluten out entirely. It can be very difficult to reliably stay away from gluten contamination, and it's seemingly an uphill battle for many of those with celiac disease. So today I'm going to be talking to you about what celiac disease is, how exposure to gluten occurs, and what happens to the body after that exposure. So first, to understand celiac disease, we have to start with defining gluten. So according to Food Chemistry in 2015, which is an academic journal, they defined gluten as a storage protein, and it can be found primarily in wheat, but also in rye and barley. And wheat is a very present item in a lot of the food that we eat. Now, celiac disease is an intolerance to ingesting that gluten. So the New England Journal of Medicine in 2007 explained this as their body is initiating an inflammatory response where antibodies are actually attacking and destroying parts of the gastrointestinal tract. And this causes an array of immediate symptoms and long-term effects. So now that we've kind of gone over the basics of celiac disease, let's dive into how exposure can occur. So first and foremost, exposure can occur by eating foods that contain gluten, but how much gluten? According to the National Celiac Association, even 1/350th of a slice of bread is enough to irritate that inflammation I spoke about previously. So you can see here, I've got a slice of bread. That tiny white sliver is the 1/350th fraction of a slice of bread that is enough to do damage. So it's very easy to happen. And another way that you can be exposed to gluten is through contamination of gluten-containing foods to non-gluten containing foods. So how does that happen? The Journal of Food Protection in 2014 defined contamination very simply as any cross-contact with gluten-containing foods. So you can imagine that this happens very easily, maybe in the food production line in the factory, or at the restaurant when they're preparing your food. And in that same study, they actually analyzed gluten-free labeled food and found that 20.5% of those foods labeled as gluten-free actually contained enough gluten to cause a reaction. And these are foods that are labeled as safe to eat for people with celiac disease. So it can be quite scary. And why is this so important to have reliable gluten-free sources? Well, according to the New England Journal of Medicine, again in 2007, a gluten-free diet is the only known treatment for celiac disease. There's not medication or anything you can do except completely eliminate gluten from your diet at all times. So knowing how easily this gluten exposure can occur, let's now turn to understanding how that exposure impacts the body in those with celiac disease. So again, referencing the Journal of Food Protection, they explained the immediate effects of gluten exposure on the body. So about 2 to 3 hours after that exposure, one with the disease might experience abdominal pain, diarrhea, constipation, vomiting, nausea, bloating, and that's just to name a few of the most common symptoms. Now, looking long-term, the Journal of Clinical Investigation in 2007, they explain how your small intestine is affected. So here you can see on the left what a normal small intestine should look like with someone without celiac disease or a healthy small intestine with celiac disease. And those finger-like projections that are coming off of the wall of the small intestine are called villi. And those villi increase the surface area of the small intestine, allowing for nutrients to be absorbed in the food that is passing through your body. And with continued exposure to gluten for those with celiac disease, your small intestine will look more like it does on the right here. So those villi are almost completely non-existent, and your small intestine is quite flat with much less surface area. Now, naturally, you're not able to absorb as much nutrients from the food that you're eating. And according to the Mayo Clinic, continued untreated celiac disease can lead to complications like malnutrition, but also bone weakening, infertility, miscarriage, and nervous system problems, and even cancer. So I hope, well, today I aim to further your understanding of what celiac disease is, how it occurs, and why avoiding gluten is so vital for those with the disease. And my hope is that you can really empathize with those who have celiac, notice the ways in which the world is inaccessible to those with the disease, and maybe one day those with celiac disease won't feel so isolated in the food world. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. So I think the topic was really relevant. I hear a lot about gluten, a lot. I knew nothing about celiac disease and the relation to gluten. And so I understand that when you said you heard a friend that was affected by it and that made you look closer. And so, I hear a lot too, just about gluten. I think I love the visuals, especially the bread. I was looking at it, and then before you said anything, I was trying to figure out when you said that, it was just I liked it. It was very attention grabbing for me. You used your hands. You used your hands like well balanced. I liked how you used it. It was very natural also, just how you used your hands. It wasn't awkward or anything. And your screen sharing was smooth too. So good job.
Thank you.
Jessica, I think you had great gestures, and then you helped me understand why people are always requesting those gluten-free products. So I really appreciate you defining the gluten before actually getting into the celiac disease, which I knew very little about. So I think your visual aids, like using the bread and that small portion, that 1 in 350, it really showed wow, that something so little can cause a lot of damage. So I think it was presented well, and your confidence in your speech and the knowledge, it was perfect.
Thank you so much.
I have to agree with Gabriella. I really like your visual aids. I think they really helped me get a better understanding to what celiac disease is, especially since I don't know about it. And I have to say, I really like your eye contact too, and your tone of voice throughout the whole speech. I think you did a really good job, and I could tell how well informative you are about this topic.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Dayanara.
Going along with the tone of voice and the flow of your speech, it really helped me learn a lot about celiac disease. I've always heard about it in classes that I've taken in the past, but I never got into the depths of it. So, especially with your visual aids, with the comparison of the small intestines and with the slice of bread visual, it really put into perspective just how influential or impactful this disease can be on somebody's life. But your flow, your inflection, your punctuations, and your confidence and your gestures really brought everybody's attention into taking the knowledge that you were presenting us with. And I really enjoyed this presentation.
Thank you.
I really appreciate the fact that you brought in your cousin in the speech. I appreciate that touch of vulnerability and, just the one person that, is close to you that was affected by it. And, so, like, you had great hand gestures, the speech was very organized as well. Just like Gabriella said, you defined what it is before you got into it, which is very great. And then you definitely appeared more confident and relaxed. I know in the practice, that was like one of my feedback comments, and you did an awesome job this time. So good job.
Thank you.
I always hate going last in feedback. I would echo everything that everyone said. I think something that really stood out to me this time through with your speech is how I know Gabriella and Rafal mentioned your definitions, and I think that was really important. So you laid a really strong foundation with your definitions, but then you also really clearly showed us the impact. So kind of like you gave us like full life cycle of like, here's gluten, here's its consequences. And that was really important. And I think something that you did that made those distinctions really clear was slowing down. So you like varied your pacing and your like pitch and tone of your voice to really emphasize the consequences of gluten. So those were like really subtle ways you kind of like non-verbally cued us into the impacts of your speech. So well done.
Thanks, Rachel.
Okay. Just gonna start my timer to hold myself accountable here. Oh my gosh. Okay. Hello, guys. My name is Jenica, and my purpose today is to inform you of the mental health issues that teens go through. We all either know a teen, maybe we have a teen of our own, but at the very least, we all have been a teen before. So I think that this information can be valuable to all of us in one way or another. And although mental health, I want to say this, is important for everyone in all ages, today I'm just going to focus on the effects and some of the things that teens go through. So a little bit of my background. I actually come today not only as your classmate, but as a mother and also someone who once was a teenager that went through a lot of hard things that affected my mental health, and as a young adult as well, with some of the things that I went through. And I can tell you that although I wish I had the knowledge that I have now as a teenager, I am just grateful because everything that I went through has made me who I am today. So as we come to understand what some of the silent battles that teens go through, at the very least, we can be more loving and sensitive and attentive to some of the things that they're going through, when they're quiet. So I'll be focusing on 3 points today because there are so many approaches we can take with mental health, but the 3 topics and the 3 that I want to focus on are depression, unstable family life, and suicidal thoughts. So first, depression. According to an article published on Psychiatry Online, clinical depression and related mood disorders are strongly associated with significant disruption in work, education, relationships, and social roles. So this tells us that disruptions cause these things and that consistency is important in a child's life. So the symptoms aren't always seen. Sometimes they're subtle. For example, my oldest daughter, she's 14, and just most recently, she was going through some things that I didn't even know were symptoms of depression until we took her to the doctor, because she was saying that it was hard to eat. She was moving very slow, very tired, and hard to get out of bed. So I thought maybe it was something with her blood, or didn't know what it was. And the doctor said she did have mental depressive disorder. So, and other symptoms too for depression is, that sometimes teenagers feel misunderstood. A lot of teenagers don't have anyone to talk to about what they're going through, and they're feeling alone and just by themselves. Which brings me to my next point that contributes to a teenager's mental health, which is their unstable family life. And first, I do want to say it's very important to understand that it's not the child's fault how or who brought them up. Yet it still contributes to who they become as young adults. So the graph I have here that I'm going to show you came from the Institute for Family Studies, and it just shows you briefly pretty much that 34% of couples, they cohabitate before engagement, and even after engagement, 23% still don't last. And it's not the child's fault that happens that way, but it does contribute to families being unstable and children being brought up in broken homes. Also, according to an article called How Instability Affects Kids, written by Anna Sutherland in 2014, instability frequently entails of loss of resources, whether of parental time or attention, or being cut off from their friends, their supportive friends. It matters for a children's successful development. And instability can look like being raised in a single parent home, from either parents never being married at all, or parents divorcing, no parents, so like a foster home situation, or they don't have either parent, but they do have parents, they're just not their biological parents, so like an adoption situation. And lastly, I will talk about suicidal thoughts that some teenagers go through. Now, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention research found that there were approximately 100,000 teens ages 15 to 19 suicide deaths over a 40-year period between 1975 and 2015. And just like depression, suicidal thoughts can be difficult to detect unless you're paying close attention to the person, to the child, because they're not saying anything. A lot of times they're not talking. And suicidal thoughts come from not feeling valued, but feeling neglected instead. A teen could have these thoughts because they don't see purpose in life, and they're just not getting affirmations or shown their purpose. In conclusion, you've now heard some of the silent hardships that teens go through and that contribute to their mental health issues. So I hope that this will just help you be more aware. I myself now am an advocate for teenagers, for our generation, and studying to be a youth therapist with my children as my first clients. And here they are. Thank you for listening.
Hi, Jenica. Thank you for sharing. I think topic that you got through it very well. I did see the hand gestures and like, I feel like the eye contact was there. I did see that. And then I just, again, like, thanks for sharing like some of your life along with your children's disorders and stuff, like very private information speech, but it actually does need better knowledge and the hardships that teens do go through. So I think it was pretty straightforward.
I have to say, I really like how well organized you have presented your speech. It was really well informative, and I really like how you broke down the information. As a teenager myself, I definitely learned a lot from what you said throughout your speech, and definitely am more aware of to be more attentive of my friends. And so I really appreciate you sharing this information. And I think you did a really good job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jenica, for sharing. Firstly, your posture and your composure through such a deep topic that most people are uncomfortable talking about really, for some reason, lightened up the mood and kept us engaged, and not just to feel like sad or melancholy about the topic, but to be enthusiastic to learn about how to raise awareness about this. I really do love your visual aids, especially the one showing us of your first clients, your family. That was really personal. We really appreciated that. And your tone of voice was smooth and loud enough that we all could understand without having to wonder whether or not you're keeping your composure throughout the topic. Hence why I think your posture and composure really kept cool, calm, kept us engaged throughout the whole speech.
Thank you.
Danica, I think you did a wonderful job. I said this in the practice and I'll say it again on the rubric. I'll say it again. I can hear how passionate you are about this topic, and I absolutely admire that about you. I love the picture of your kids, and I appreciate your vulnerability with this topic, and talking about your kids, and it just shows how passionate you are about this topic. So you did a wonderful job. Thank you.
Jenica, I agree that your tone really helped keep our attention, and you did such a good job of making your tone sort of welcoming and inclusive about a hard topic, while also taking it seriously, right? Like not being too flippant with it. I think something that stuck out to me with your speech this time around was how you qualified your topic. So you did a couple of acknowledgments early on where you were like, this is a really big topic. Here's what I'm going to focus on. There's a lot out here. Here's what this is what I'm going to tell you all about. And that was really helpful in, I think, maybe kind of anticipating audience like questions about like, well, what about this other thing? And because you're like, no, I get that there are those things, but I'm just going to focus on this. So I think it was a really smart choice in use of qualifiers. Thank you.
Great work, Jenica. I don't want to mirror everyone else's points as well. So I really, really enjoyed the way that you present yourself as a mom, and you that's in the textbook. You're putting yourself into your audience as someone, and I think you did a really great job of presenting that in the beginning, as well as your preview. It was very clear what your goals were in the speech, and you started with your 3 points and 3 goals of the speech, and you very effectively conveyed that to us. So I think you did an amazing job.
Thank you, you guys.
Good evening, everyone. Today I will be discussing how to obtain a driver's license in California. So many think that it's not necessary to obtain a license. That's not the law in the state of California. In order to operate a motor vehicle, you must hold in your possession your driver's license. I will inform you on how to obtain your driver's license and the difference between a real ID and an original license. Have you ever considered buying your own car, maybe working for DoorDash or Uber, Amazon, or trucking companies? Maybe you've seen people on those motorized scooters in downtown zooming across the road. Well, you even need a driver's license for one of those. According to data journalist Katrina Bushel, she shares numbers from the Federal Highway Administration, which show approximately 61% of 18-year-olds in the US that are licensed by 2018, compared to 80.4 that were licensed in 1983. 16-year-old licensed drivers has also significantly decreased by 46.2% from 1983 to 25.6% in 2018. The data from the journalist shares the percentages of the US population that held a driver's license in teen groupings within 1983 and 2018. According to a law firm, Fran Hash Law Group, there was a time when teens used to be excited about getting a learner's permit, and like turning 15, they like remember saying, oh, I can't wait to get my driver's license. However, in the recent years, it's not the case anymore. So per the Federal Highway Administration of the US Department of Transportation, the number has declined in teen drivers, even with the slight increase in 2019. Only 1 in 4 18-year-olds actually have a license today. So why the drop in teen drivers? Well, it's true, it does cost almost an arm and a leg for gas, but you know, today's kids get a lot of stuff handed, and lo and behold, we have ride sharing. So they can just call an Uber or a Lyft. Great. So in about 2019, 205,000 young drivers were actually injured in a traffic collision, and 7.8% were involved in a fatal crash, yet only 5.3% were accounted for and had a license, which means nearly several million motorists that are teen drivers are not licensed. It is a fact that teens do have less knowledge of rules of the road. So if you're ever teaching a teen driver about the road, just don't be too soft on them, because it'll teach them to become a better and a safer driver. So in California, having a driver's license allows you to operate a motor vehicle. In order to get a license, it is a requirement that you pass a written exam as well as a behind the wheel test. So the first step in getting a driver's license is obtaining a valid permit, and the permit exam consists of 46 questions for those under the age of 18 and 36 questions for those over the age of 18. So in the process of obtaining your permits, you will be required, and in order to make the appointment, you have to create an online account on the DMV website. And then once you create the appointment, you're able to start the application. And the application can be found on the local DMV website, which I am going to provide a visual of. For some reason, I cannot share.
Right now.
Okay, so this is the California DMV driver's license application site. And you would just go to getting a new driver's license for the first time if you have never had one. And then you'll just continue with the questionnaire and so that's the application. Along with the application, there is another site which gives you a list of what you will even need for the license. And that list consists of documents like bringing a valid US passport or a valid permanent residence card, as well as 2 forms of proof of address. It could be like medical documents, bank statement, anything that's like legal, valid within the US. So once you have those documents, you can now apply and for the license. You can also walk in to apply, but you do have to be at your local DMV by a certain time. It just depends where you are located. So during the application, you will be asked if you've ever had a license. You will be asked your height, weight, gender, eye color, hair color. You will also be asked if you wear prescription glasses. If you do, there will be a restrictive provision on the back of the driver's license that says corrective lenses must be worn. So if you're ever pulled over and not wearing glasses, this is why you would need to know that information. Get fined for things like that. During the process of applying for the permit, you will also have to take an exam. So you will be giving a driver's handbook. They have these California driver handbooks in all different languages. I have a Spanish version and an English version. Like I said, even if you're riding a motorized scooter, you have to have a license for that. So there are motorized or motorcycle handbooks, and you can find information on that within the book. So those handbooks pretty much go through like all the steps that I've talked about. If you were to open it up, you could see, sorry, this is the Spanish. But if you open it up, it pretty much goes down with getting the California's driver's license to begin with. And then it tells you the documents that you may need, like I discussed, proof of identities, legal name, you will a social security card, and you need to obtain a license. So also receiving a permit, once you pass your exam, you can only miss, I believe it's 7. So you have to get about 32 correct if you're over 18. I'm not sure the exact number for anybody younger, but after you do pass the test and obtain your permit, you're given that permit and you're allowed to drive. You can only drive alone or with somebody 25 or older. And within that permit and applying for the actual license, you're preparing yourself for the behind the wheel test, and you have to practice at least 50 hours, which includes 10 nighttime hours, and that will qualify you to then apply for the behind the wheel. So then when it's time for the behind the wheel test, you have that appointment, you go in, and you do not park in the test park area yet at all. You check in and then you'll be instructed, okay, we have all your documentation. The required documentation for behind the wheel is you bring an insured licensed driver and they have their insurance with them. And it's recommended by Steve Gordon he's a DMV director. It's recommended by him that you use a car that you've been practicing in and that you're comfortable in. So with that being said, after entering the test area, you will be instructed to go ahead and pull into a starting zone. And then you will have to sit in the vehicle with the person that you brought, the licensed driver that's attending with you. And they will have to sit in the car until the instructor comes out and relieves them. They cannot ride along, and absolutely no children are allowed in the test area. So with that being said, after your person is relieved, you guys then proceed to start the drive test. Your instructor will let you know which way you're going to be going, left at whatever stoplight, and then right at the next stoplight. And it's just advised that you do make sure that you are looking over your shoulder in the direction that you are turning. They do like to see those gestures and movements, that you're visual of your surroundings and all of that. So with that being said, you will get docked if they don't see you like turn and look. If they don't see any of that, those small things, you will get docked, and you can only get docked for so many things. It's only up to 14 of like little mistakes. Like they have this category of simple mistakes and major mistakes. For example, a simple mistake would be not fully turning. So I mean, if you go like that, like, yeah, you're looking, but you are not doing a full turn. So those are simple mistakes. A major mistake would be just running a stoplight or a stop sign. The test will just stop and end there. So you don't want to do those things. But so as you're given those directions, you should consider all of those things, and then you will be instructed to head back to the driver's area part. You will be asked to turn off your vehicle, and the instructor will go over the results with you at that time and let you know how you did. He will go over any mistakes you possibly made and give you any advice for future driving. So if you do pass, you will get a signing right then and there of pass or fail. And that's pretty much the process on how to obtain a driver's license.
I have to say that I really enjoyed your speech. I think that it was really well informative, and I like how you broke down the information and made it a little more easier for us to understand. And so I like your tone of voice throughout the speech. It was slow, it wasn't fast paced or anything. And I really like your hand gestures as well. And not only that, I also really appreciate how you showed us like a physical handbook of the requirements and of the driver license. And so I really appreciate that. And I think that you did a really good job.
Thank you.
I think your speech was really different from what I expected. Mainly because I've been a resident of Florida for the past 7 years. So hearing this really was an informative class for me, who I'm not a California resident, but hearing the processes and how it's very different from where I grew up on. And your visual of the DMV pamphlet, that I wasn't expecting that one. That one was a really good visual. I really like that hands-on showmanship that you elaborated to us. Other than that, I think you showed that you were really knowledgeable on this process and why it's important and how it can impact even the young teenagers that don't look to get licenses, but reasons why they should, and how simple it can be and how impactful it can be on our society as a whole.
Thank you.
I think that you did a wonderful job. You stated the points that you'll be discussing, which I really appreciate because I knew what to expect. I was thinking, why are teens not getting their driver's license? And then there you are, diving right into it. So I really appreciate that. And you also incorporated questions that we should be expecting when we do get our license, especially with like the height and the eye color and stuff like that. Those are like really good details to have as well. Thank you.
Gabriella, that was so thorough and I feel so much more informed. I think what stuck out to me in your speech was the introduction. You did such a good job of establishing an impetus for your speech and like a needed niche for like why we need this information. I learned so much just thinking about like renting scooters downtown and wow, like you need a license for that and those sorts of things. So it was really pragmatic, I think, across a wide variety in your audience. And so I thought that was really well done. And in that, because you established so many reasons why we should listen, it was easy to follow along. Even though you had a lot of detail later on, we were like, oh, well, I can tie it back to this thing that you had started with. So really good job laying that foundation early on.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. You did a great job. You introduced this topic and I thought, oh, I got my license. I know everything about this. And I absolutely did not. So it's very clear you're very knowledgeable about this topic. And I think anyone coming from an outside perspective looking to learn about getting a driver's license would have absolutely everything they need to know from your speech, which I mean, that is exactly what we're looking for in this. So I think that's you hit the nail on the head with that. And I loved the actual handouts that you had mid-speech. I think that was super attention grabbing and just a really great way to go through those. And, you know, you pushed through any pauses of, you know, looking at statistics, getting that information. You pushed through that and continued your flow throughout the speech and were engaging and just generally wonderful. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, I also loved the information because it was very up to date. I like how you mentioned the real ID. A lot of your information was just needed for me too, because I actually just been looking into it recently, not as thorough, obviously, but for my teens that are going to be getting their license. And so you brought a lot of information up that I've heard and can relate to as far as just like teens not getting their license and why. I also love the multi-visuals, how you screen shared and you had the books. I think that was really good. Well done.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Dayanara, and today I'll be informing you on the importance of sleep and its effects in a college student's life. Did you know that chronic health problems can be caused through sleep deprivation? Today, I'll be informing you on the importance of sleep and its effects in a college student's life. As a college student, many of us are juggling our student life, working life, and family life. By the end of the day, we're left extremely exhausted, leaving sleep the only method for us to relax. However, sometimes we don't even get enough sleep. Throughout this speech, I'll be going over what sleep is and its benefits, the adverse effects of sleep deprivation in a college student's life, and what we can do to get enough sleep. Sleep is a basic need that humans require to survive and live a comfortable life. Sleep has 4 stages, and each of these stages plays an important role in the quality of sleep that we receive. Here, I created a pie chart from a 2023 article of My Health Finder explaining these stages. Here, there are stages, and here is stage 1. For this stage to occur, it is basically the transition of being awake to being asleep. Here is stage 2, which is the light sleep. Here our brain waves tend to slow down, our breathing starts to relax, and our body is a lot more relaxed. Here is stage 3, and this stage is the deep sleep, where our body tends to be paralyzed for a certain period of time, and this is where we basically dream and have feel more relaxed once we wake up. And here is REM sleep, which is the 4th and final stage, and in this stage is basically the transition of being asleep to being awake, and here our breathing starts to regulate and our brain waves start to move a lot more rapid, and we also have a lot more rapid eye movement, which is what REM stands for. And yep, this is the sleep cycle. Now that I've gone over what sleep is and its importance, I'll now go over the negative effects that sleep deprivation has on a college student's life. According to NIH, from a 2014 article, 50% of college students have reported having daytime sleepiness, being sleep deprived, and having an irregular sleeping schedule. Not only that, 70.6% of college students have also reported receiving insufficient sleep every day. These students that receive insufficient sleep not only have that high risk of academic failure, but also harming their physical health. Here I will show you a human autonomy graph explaining the negative effects that sleep deprivation has in the human body. Sleep deprivation causes memory issues, the trouble with thinking and concentration, mood changes, accidents. It also causes high blood pressure. It weakens immunity. It also raises the risk for diabetes, low sex drive, weight gain, risk of heart disease, and poor imbalance. Sleep deprivation has a lot of negative effects on our well-being, and knowing of these effects, we'll now go over what we can do to prevent sleep deprivation. At the age of 18 to 64, adults have to receive at least 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night. In 2021, Healthline created an article providing methods on how to prevent sleep deprivation, and one of those methods is creating a sleeping schedule. It's very important for us to normalize and adjust our bodies to knowing when exactly is the right time to fall asleep, to improve our quality of sleep. And so it's very important to go to sleep at a certain period of time every night and waking up at a certain period of time every morning to improve our quality of sleep and help our body to adjust to this schedule. Not only that, there are other methods that also improve our quality of sleep, which is refraining from caffeine, electronic devices, and exercising regularly on a daily basis a few hours before bedtime. Sleep is an important basic need for survival. It allows our mind and bodies to function properly on a daily basis. If we don't receive the sufficient amount of sleep, we face the high risk of chronic diseases and the deficiency of living our lives to the fullest potential. Although the consequences of sleep deprivation might seem scary, it is something that we can avoid. It isn't something that is complicated. Instead, all it requires is commitment, and if done properly, the life that you'll encounter is something that you'll never regret. Thank you.
I think Dayanara, I really like that informational speech, especially since it's something we all go through. Your transition between you and your visuals, to me, for just figuring it out now, despite having technical difficulties, you made it seem as if you never had them at all. So I really appreciate those transitions. Secondly, your articulation on each of the effects that we get from sleep deprivation as something we all go through. I think it's something that we all notice in each other, but you very, very smoothly elaborated upon it just to make sure that we understand straight and to the point. Thank you for your speech.
Oh, thank you.
You did a really, really good job. That was a great improvement from your practice speech. You seemed and sounded so much more confident. Again, I really I'm gonna go off of what Alejandro said with your visuals. Very smooth transition. Does not seem like you had any technical difficulties earlier at all. Good job.
Thank you.
I agree with what's been said already, and I think you were just really fluid in your presentation. There were very few fillers. You were the pacing was really well done. I was looking at the rubric, and I think you did such a good job of choosing your visuals because they were really impactful and relevant, and they were different types, but they were academically sourced. So really good job choosing those. And then the other thing is just your structure was really, really clear. And that was really nice because it's such a relevant topic and there's so much on it, but your structure made it really easy to follow along with. So nicely done.
Thank you.
Yeah, great job with this speech. Everyone kind of took the things that I was going to say already. So let me see. It's so clear that you practiced a lot between the practice round and this time. Your confidence was through the roof. And your language was very professional, and just the overall flow of the speech was really good. And again, the visuals, I think they really aided your speech and helped bring our attention to what you were saying, and really helped explain what you were talking about. So overall, just great job.
Thank you.
I have to agree with Jessica. That it was very clear that you practiced a whole lot for this. It was very smooth. Also, the topic was on point. We all could relate to that, and your eye contact was great. Your posture was also well maintained throughout the whole speech, and you sounded very confident. It was really good.
Thank you.
Hello. So I know I wasn't here like the last time, but from remembering like the storytelling speech and to this one, it's like has improved so much. So I liked the confidence that you've delivered in your speech, and then just the information like about the insufficient speech, comparing it to today's academic culture, kind of saying how the insufficient sleep does affect the high risk of possibly academic failure. So it's very important to know like how health-wise, why it's important to get sleep and, you know, wake up at a decent time and going to bed at the decent times. I also did like the visuals, especially the pie chart. You seem to know how to go around it very thoroughly. So I think you did very well delivering.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Alejandro, and my informational speech today is going to be about the impact of low funding on schooling and its linkage to the success rate of students compared to those of higher funding. So in 2019, Felicity Hoffman, an actress, was sentenced to 14 days for fabricating fake SAT scores of her daughter to fraudulently enroll her into the University of Southern California. 8 years earlier, in 2011, Tanya McDowell received a 5-year sentence with larceny for enrolling her son in a school within the district that did not reside in. This is according to Ms. Romo and Mr. Applebaum from 2019, 2011. So as I stated in the beginning, the specific purpose of this is just to inform you the impact of unequal education funding and how the low funded schools, students, their careers lead to different lives than those of the higher funding. So just like me, I'm sure many of you have wondered how those low-funded students that we meet in our lives turn out in comparison to those of the higher funding, simply because of the difference in opportunity. So I'll be explaining the imbalance in budgets and the short and long-term impact it has on our society's students. Beginning, first of all, the unequal funding in education and significance is mostly seen in urban areas, and it can impact both higher and lower classes differently. So I'm going to show my visual right here. So I use 3 cities as my examples to explain the linkage between economic status and the quality of living, i.e. education. So I use their top median net worths for single income families. So in La Jolla, their top median was 158,000. Mira Mesa, their top median was 109, and Lemon Grove with the top median being 71,000. And as the triangle progresses, we see that La Jolla residents usually that earn that top median salary have a master's degree with 43% being the average. Mira Mesa was actually a tie with bachelor's, vocational, and associates with 30%. And Lemon Grove, their major education system was focused on vocational and associates. As we move on with the quality of living, we see that La Jolla for every 100,000 residents that La Jolla has, they experience theft 86.9 times out of 100,000. But this is usually just petty theft, such as just robbing purses that are left out in the parks or clothes from shopping stores out in the outlets. In Mira Mesa, they had 334.2 burglaries occur for every 100,000 residents. This can include break-ins or simple robbery on the streets. However, in comparison to the rest of the two cities, Lemon Grove experienced 1,038.9 times of the amount of theft for every 100,000 residents in comparison to La Jolla, which is petty theft, actual home break-ins, and store holdups. So as we move on, why and how this matters, this can lead to lower retention rates and poor career choices. This can also translate into the lack of work expertise and lack of opportunity that these students in lower funding educational systems go through. And the second visual, I created a cycle. So as we're starting off on the low and income poverty level, leading to lower education quality, such as poor school times, poor school education opportunities. Lesser involved teachers was a big one. This all led to less diverse in job qualifications. In turn, less job opportunities. These students never received the proper training into vocational schools, associate's degrees, or even voluntary certifications such as QuickBooks, Intuit, or accounting, such as other schools were used in this comparison. These lack of job opportunities led to a lower employment rate, leading back to the cycle of low income and poverty level. How does this happen? Really, the theory and solution, the reason behind this was systematic funding, per Mr. Davis's article in 2021. A lot of schools have a qualification known as progressive and traditional funding. And in this visual, you can kind of see the difference between the two as they both progress in the funding. So progressive students, progressive schools, and progressive school districts, mostly seen in La Jolla, higher income societies and cities, their schools focus on student goals and talents to be nurtured and prioritized to lead better lives or better varieties in careers. Whereas traditional schools, such as the one I went to in high school, was that the school must meet the criteria despite their situation. Nothing personal, it's just the school saying we have to meet these grades by this semester. The ones that get held back and receive intensive training. As we progress forward, higher progressive school fundings led to higher GPAs, higher quality of education, going back to school lunches, the amount of after-school activities, the teacher involvement, the parent-teacher involvement. A lot of this involved parents involved in their student and children's lives as well. Whereas the progressive, lower progressive, and traditional, aka regressive, funded schools showed low effort in student growth and quality of education, such as closing out schools after a certain amount of time, despite needing extra tutoring, or simply trying to gain growth in qualifications or secondary educations. So with this being said, in this speech, we covered how the imbalance of educational funding can impact not only students, but our society, leading to the workforce and to the education side. Towards the end, we're all aware of these differences in the public education. However, with this information, I'm hoping that you now learn the impact it has and acknowledge that there is a difference out there in our education. Thank you and have a good night.
I have to say, I really liked your speech, including your visual aids. I think they were really professional and really broke down the information that you stated. I really like how you use your hands a lot throughout your speech, your hand gestures, and your tone of voice, your tone of voice, and the way that you your pace. There we go. Your pace of voice was also really well done.
Thank you, ma'am.
Is it my turn? I don't. Okay. I think it was a great improvement on your visual aids comparing to your practice speech. I appreciate the fact that you kept it local, you know, talking about the La Jolla region. And then, you know, mentioning the thefts and, you know, that and tying that into our education. It makes it more relatable. I also appreciate your comparison between progressive, higher progressive, and lower progressive. It makes it easier to follow information. And I think like zooming in and then like moving it along just made it a little bit more interactive as well, and just easier to follow your speech. Thank you.
Thank you. I still have that sketch, by the way.
I agree that the visual aids are really helpful. I knew like when we practiced that your topic was really important, and having the visuals just really helped concretize, I think, like the information that you were sharing. As I was listening, I really enjoyed your use of questions to engage the audience and keep your content moving. I know the use of rhetorical questions can be like kind of controversial, and some people think they're like they're not always effective, but I think the way that you use them as like transitions and to lead into the next topic was really well done. So great job.
Thank you.
So I agree with the visual aids. Those were wonderful in guiding us through your speech. And my understanding of the speech this time around with those visuals was so much higher. Just because it really it helps you understand everything that's going on. And I love the topic choice here and the way that you included such a wide scope of effects of different education for people, and like really delved into the impact in so many different areas. So it was very clear that you've done your research and you're very passionate about this as well. And the tone and inflection in your voice as well helps keep us on track and hearing what you're saying and focusing in on certain parts of your words. And I also thought your gesturing was really helpful in your speech as well.
Thank you.
Yes, so I agree with what everyone said already. Like, you guys are so eloquent. So, but you speak very well. You know, you kept my attention the entire time. I think the eye contact was really good too. The topic, I enjoyed the topic as well. I think this topic comes up in some conversations, but it just really, I could tell that you knew what you were talking about. You did your research and you knew exactly what you were talking about. And I also like Rafal said, that you kept it local, which made it more relatable to like, you know, us, and we knew the areas. It was like, okay, good to know. And you also transitioned really well too with each topic. It was very, and your visuals were great too. And you explained the visuals very well. It was easy to understand.
Thank you.
I very well agree with everyone mentioning the surrounding areas. I like how you put that in relation into your speech. Like, we're all pretty much familiar with La Jolla, Miramar, and like all those places. So I really like how the charts that you did make, I assume you made those. I like how it reflected all of that information. Your tone of voice was perfect, the timing, your gestures all included. The little cycle chart, like you knew exactly the information that you wanted to share that was within that. And I think it was delivered very well.
Thank you. I did make these myself. Became a pro at it, I guess.